What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Engadget podcast live stream. I'm senior editor Devindra Hardwar. Today I'm joined with senior writer Sam Rutherford. Hey, Sam.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. And also joining us today is senior editor from CNET, Lisa Eadicicco. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hi. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff today. Also, podcast producer Ben Ellman is here. Hey, Ben.
Hi.
Howdy. Yeah, we're going to be talking about AI gadgets and specifically the Rabbit R1, which is a thing we have a lot of feelings about. A thing that I think we're seeing all the commentary online. And it's just not so great. I spent the past week with it. Lisa has also spent the week with it, and we have a lot of thoughts on these things. And yeah, we're starting a little early today. So I see a few people in the chat. Hello. Thank you all for joining us. See Zanil. I see Y. Declan, good morning. Always fun to spend a Thursday morning talking about gadgets. Hello, hello. I hope you all are ready to talk about AI devices. But yeah,
the second time in a month or so.
Maybe this will be the end of it. And I think that will be our main hope for this all to end at some point.
I was like, usually these things come in threes. Like, I kind of want like one more just to like get like the full trio of like.
This is true.
Yeah.
We didn't have.
I was gonna say, I don't think this is going to be the end of it, but we'll see.
I hope the companies coming forward learn some lessons from everything happening here. But yeah, and for first-time viewers, we're going to be recording the Engadget podcast, which is mainly an audio podcast. So once we start that, we won't really be talking with you too much, chat, but we'll do some breaks in between sections to do some Q&As and things like that. I don't have the R1 with me right now because I totally forgot it, but I'll run up and grab it at some point. But yeah, how are you all doing this morning?
Pretty good.
Good?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and I want to shout out Mubarak Mufasa, who said, Mafara, excuse me, Mubarak Mafara, who said, hi from Hong Kong, 9:30 p.m. here.
Hello.
Love to hear where people are watching from, so always shout that out, please.
Hello, yes, please shout that out. I see no pro. Didn't Marquez already kill it? I mean, probably. Yeah, I saw his video go up too. So I'm very happy a lot of people are just like getting the claws out for bad gadgets because I don't know, we occasionally need to see that.
So we don't get as many bad gadgets, like straight up bad gadgets nowadays, because everything's just like there's a certain level of like competence, and then usually if it doesn't hit that, they just
because
don't get
it's
released.
phones.
Yeah, because
like
it's
this is the
phones
first.
or
This is the first new kind of device type.
You could argue this is also just a phone too, like so, or like a lesser phone.
We'll get into that though.
We'll get into all that stuff. Okay, double checking recordings. I'm good.
Yep.
You guys good?
I'm good.
Yeah,
Hi
I
to
believe
Simon
so.
B, who said morning from Montreal. I'd really love to get back to Montreal sometime this summer because the only other time I've been to Montreal was in the middle of February, which was nice to see like Canadian winter, but God, was it like treacherous walking around a pretty hilly city that is covered in ice.
The winter seemed kind of rough there.
Yeah. Okay, so for recurring viewers, you know what we're about to do. If you are just tuning in for the first time, we get the show started by doing like a little slate, and then also be aware that we can't talk to chat all the time because we're going to be recording the audio version of the podcast. I want to make sure that the audio listeners don't feel too left out. So it's not like, we're constantly saying, oh, this person had a good idea, that person had a good idea. We're going to have some segments between times when we're actually recording the podcast where we can talk directly to chat. I'm going to be banking all of the stuff in chat, so don't worry about that. I'll also be interacting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to count down from 3, and at the end of 3, we're all going to make a sound. You can clap your hands or snap your fingers. It's just like the clapperboard in TV and movies.
Join in, folks.
Yeah, join in. So put your claps or your snap fingers in the chat, counting down from 3, 2, 1, and some silence. I'll let you know when the silence is over. Okay, silence over. Let's talk about this Wabbit.
People have asked, we get silence for room tone, which is a good thing to have. You get just like the background noise, so your audio editing app can block it out. And you end up getting pristine sounding audio. It's great.
Yeah, you get
So,
the background noise, and then also, if you're really sly, you can cut a little bit of it in
mhm.
to make sure that there's enough of a pause in some cases.
That's useful. That's useful. I do hate it when shows sound like it's just like dead air too, like it's just two people talking in a vacuum. Sometimes you need a little noise. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing we'll figure out. Okay, let's kick it off in ready to go. Okay. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget podcast. I'm senior editor Devindra Hardwar. Joining me today is senior writer Sam Rutherford. Hey, Sam.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing okay, and we will be talking about the Rabbit R1 and the I don't know the state of AI gadgets at this point, or just how terrible they are. So we've got a special guest to join in for that too. As always, folks, if you're enjoying the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes. Drop us an email at podcastinggadget.com. We also are doing live streams of this recording, typically Thursday mornings around 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Today, we're actually doing it a little earlier. So, stay tuned to our social channels for that stuff too. I'm at Devindra on Twitter. I usually announce it there. But yeah, join us. It's a good time. We've got a good group of folks watching us make the show. So let's talk about the Rabbit R1. And joining us to do that is senior editor at CNET, Lisa Eadicicco. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Happy to have you on. And I wanted another voice of somebody who has fully experienced the Rabbit and I don't know the horrors or the frustrations around this thing. So I will let you have the first word. Can you describe what the Rabbit R1 is, Lisa, and your overall thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's always the first question I get when I
Yeah.
talk about the Rabbit
What
R1
the
is
hell is
what
this
is this
thing?
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it right here actually. It's basically just this tiny orange box that you speak into to, ask it for the weather. You can ask it, or you're supposed to be able to ask it to order an Uber. I have not been able
Mm,
to successfully
has
do
not
that
worked.
yet.
Yeah.
DoorDash, it's basically like having a voice assistant in your pocket. The idea I think is really intriguing. I think when this thing was first announced at CES, it kind of captured everyone's imagination a
Hmm.
little bit. The idea of this operating system that can somehow tie together all of your accounts and services without needing to open any apps and just get things done for you. Sounds great. But I think what we're seeing here that a lot of people will agree is just like a very early product that doesn't seem finished yet, to put
Hmm.
it kindly.
Doesn't
And it's
seem
funny that you
finished. Yeah.
mentioned I was gonna say it's funny that you mentioned frustrations. I
Hmm.
I just had a video go up yesterday. It's not a video review, but it's kind of like a behind the scenes of like how I tested this thing. It's like
Uh-huh.
I took it out for a day of sightseeing to see like how it could help me and things like that. And there are times where I just look like visibly frustrated, and I just love it because it's such like a raw reaction of what it's like to actually use this thing. Whereas a lot of my reviews and videos are a little bit more
Hmm.
scripted and less like off the cuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can feel that too. And also, like when we review things, like when you're reviewing laptops or right, another smartphone, it's like, oh yeah, I know what this is. I've seen this before. I kind of know the deal here. I will say straight up, I did not like this thing at all. It doesn't seem like fully baked. It doesn't even seem like they had even put it in the oven. I'll put it that way. Like this is a cool looking device because it was designed by the folks at Teenage Engineering, and they make synthesizers and all sorts of cool stuff. I have a PC case from them that is just like kind of cool looking, but it has a cool look, and that's kind of it. And it kind of is reminiscent of the Playdate, which we've talked about, which Teenage Engineering also designed. Similarly square, it's thicker than the Playdate, uses not as good materials, I'd say. The plastic feels chintzier and cheaper. It feels like a kid's toy more than the Playdate does because that one actually has metal and premium feeling stuff. But yeah, this is supposed to be a smart virtual, AI assistant, and at every step of the way, I just found it to be incredibly dumb, like absolutely dumb and frustrating. The idea is that yeah, you can talk to it and just order an Uber to you without specifying exact locations, and hope that the driver actually comes to you because you don't get much feedback from this tiny screen. The Uber service didn't work at all, but the thing that killed it for me is that I was able to order 2 sandwiches over DoorDash, and when I asked it for 2 sandwiches, it when I asked it to order some food, it gave me 3 random local restaurants, like not even
Mhm.
like necessarily high quality ones. When I tapped into the restaurant, it only gave me 6 menu items. I couldn't customize them. I couldn't be like, just remove the cheese or something. All you could do is add menu items to the shopping cart, order it. This process, by the way, takes several minutes because it takes RabbitOS forever to load anything. Um, I hit a button and it ordered it. Never confirmed payment. Never confirmed delivery address or anything. Right? It was working all entirely off of my DoorDash defaults, and I just kind of hoped and prayed that food showed up. And that to me does not seem like a good computer interaction, right? Like as soon as I placed that order, my phone started lighting up because the DoorDash app, which is helpful and works on a phone, was like, "Hey, order confirmed. This is your driver. Here's the location on the map. They're coming towards you." Like all this useful information when I'm hungry and I'm worried that my food is not coming to me. The Rabbit R1 occasionally will give you like updates, like, "Hey, so they're coming." I don't know. No updates beyond that, but there's no like interface because this thing has a tiny screen and only talks to you. Like that's it.
You also
So
can't ask it for order status. I tried to do that too when
yes,
I used DoorDash, and I was like, this seems like it'd be a really useful thing for a voice assistant to be able to do, to be able to say, "Hey, how's my order doing?" And
yeah,
yeah, that didn't work. But I agree. It's
yeah.
very odd that they only have a few menu items and they seem to be randomly selected. I don't know. Like, I ordered sushi through DoorDash, and
Uh-huh.
my choices were like this big sashimi platter for two that was like $30, which I did not want to order, and then like a spicy tuna roll. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll get a couple of spicy tuna
Get some
rolls.
tuna rolls. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the only thing that actually worked about this thing because beyond that, the Rabbit R1 is just it's kind of a dumb AI thing, right? You can ask it the questions you can ask Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT and Google Bard and everything. You can ask it simple questions. It can do some translation, but the other stuff it does is just kind of dumb. Like you can talk to it and have it create a Midjourney picture for you if you have a paid Midjourney account. Okay, that's what am I going to do with this? I get
You
4
could do that
pictures
on your
from
phone though too.
you
I
could
mean, you
do
can
that.
ask
You could
Gemini
do
to create an
everything.
image for you.
You
Yes.
could do
And
everything
that's
this thing
like
does on your
that's the
phone.
real rub of the problem is
Yeah.
that everything
Mhm.
you could do with the Rabbit, you can do better on your phone.
Faster, better, without paying an extra $200, by the way. This thing is $200. Doesn't have any monthly fees, but you can add a SIM card to it for, like, always on connectivity, but that you're just paying for it to be, like, always on and useless. Like, that's the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
So, Sam, you've seen a lot of this stuff, around the Rabbit and around the Humane AI Pin.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts at this point?
So my thoughts, and I've kind of like working on like a rant in the background about this, but to
Mhm,
me, both the Rabbit R1 and the Humane AI Pin, they're closer to Virtual Boy than something like the Oculus Rift, right?
mhm.
The Virtual Boy was an interesting idea, and like it
It
like
did
tapped on like
3D. Yeah.
it did 3D, it sort of did VR, but not in a way that anyone really wanted,
It gave
and
you
so
headaches, and you would see red for a long time after using that. Yeah.
yeah, and so, like, it just seems like these are just, like, the way too early versions of AI-based devices, and you can kind of see, like, especially the R1 is like, there are some okay ideas or interesting ideas, like,
Mhm.
the large action model where, like, "Hey, theoretically, I tell my device to do stuff, and it does stuff regardless of app or just, I can just
Right.
give it directions." But this is sort of what Google Assistant has been trying to do for a long time, and others, and so it's not necessarily a novel idea, but there is something there. But it's just like like both of you were saying, it's just like so half baked at this point. And I think like the big issue is that like you talk about these devices, they're using old smartphone chips, like not
Mhm.
even like recent chips at all, so they're very underpowered. And then on top of that, smartphones have just gotten to the point where they have like NPUs that are worth anything. So like, it being able to handle any sort of like AI machine learning tasks. And so obviously these things are wildly underpowered. And it's like you look at like the pieces that are going into this thing, and it's like, of course they're just like, they don't deliver on what you want or expect. But I think, they're trying to plant a flag because it's like, hey, if we can come up with an engaging idea and get people to care about us, or at least know our name, maybe our second attempt will like be good sometime down the line. But
Yeah,
that's just a big ask, because it's like when you come out with something that's this bad, you're just kind of ruining your reputation at the same time.
and the reputation of like the category too, right? Like the Humane AI Pin, complete disaster, even more expensive and required a monthly fee.
Right. And
This,
and
yeah.
and that actually ties back perfectly to my Virtual Boy analogy, because the
Mhm.
Virtual Boy came out in like what, the late 90s, and it was so bad that no one tried to do VR again for like a decade. And
Mhm.
then it wasn't until what, 2016, where we had the Oculus
Yeah.
Rift and the HTC Vive, and then they're like, oh, it's been long enough that like people forgot about how bad the Virtual Boy was, and they were willing to give these new headsets a chance.
Yeah.
And even those, like as good as they were, VR is still not like fully hitting the mainstream, and like some people might have a Quest at home or whatever, but like
Mhm.
it's not the same saturation level as smartphones, laptops, whatever.
What's funny is that Nintendo also tried 3D again with the 3DS, right, in the late 2000s, and, like, also kind of a rough launch, like, so rough that they had to immediately lower the price and
Hmm.
give, like, gifts to the people who bought it early because the 3D just didn't work so well. But yeah, lots of learning, like, even Nintendo, like, needs that learning time. I think the ultimate thing I just wanna, like, say here about this thing is that I don't what the hell is this thing for? It's not a phone replacement
Yeah.
because it can't take calls, it can't do text messages. It's not a great phone companion because it's harder and slower to use than anything you could
It's
do on
also
your
not
phone.
connected to your phone, so it's not really a phone
Yeah.
companion. It's a standalone device. I had to hotspot it to my phone because I didn't want
Yep.
to buy another SIM card for it, but yeah.
Same. I was hotspotting to, like, get it to work elsewhere. I guess it's sort of a companion because, like, if DoorDash is on your phone, then you will get
Yeah.
the alerts, like, as DoorDash, the service, is doing stuff on the this thing, on the Rabbit R1. But the point of it, it's just like the battery life is terrible. They recently released an update that made it less terrible, but when I first got this thing, the battery life would run down in like 4 hours while idling, while doing absolutely nothing. Now it'll run
Mhm.
down in maybe 8 to 12 hours while doing absolutely nothing. Still not great for a device like this small and this that's not actually doing much. So the
Yeah.
point of it just seems entirely like it's entirely missing. I'm wondering, do you guys think is there any hope for AI gadgets as a standalone thing, or is this all just something we're going to be doing on our phones because we're paying a lot of money for phones, we're paying monthly service for phones? Seems like that's where we would want our AI smarts.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to say right now. I definitely think for now, absolutely, this is the kind of technology that you'll see on a phone. I would love to see it on a smartwatch because that
Hmm.
is something that is like, nobody really likes interacting with such a tiny screen. So I feel like there's so much potential for features like this to be on like the Apple Watch or the Pixel Watch or something like that. And I hope it does. But yeah, right now I think, it's funny because before Rabbit AI and before the Humane AI Pin, like one of my first thoughts as generative AI became more popular was like,
Hmm.
I wonder how this is going to impact phones because that's my big beat here at CNET is mobile devices. So I was wondering, are phones going to change in any way? Are their designs going to change? Are there going to be new types of hardware that come out? And I didn't think that would be the case because the smartphone, as Sam said, is already so pervasive that we don't really have a need for anything else.
Hmm.
So it is interesting to see this kind of stuff, but honestly, it's going to be hard to get it to progress faster if a lot of people aren't using it. So I think that's the other thing too, and I think that's probably why they shipped this so early is so that their models can also learn from more people besides just their employees using it. So um but yeah, I'm pretty skeptical right now about there being a need for AI hardware.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, this thing, I think you hit the nail on the head where the biggest issue with it is that it doesn't really do anything better than your phone right now, and there isn't a clear need for it. And I think that's
Hmm.
why I reviewed it the way that I did. Like, yes, there are other issues and other bugs, like the battery drain issue that you mentioned was really, really bad. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard for me to even film my video when I was, making a video about this thing because we actually had to stop at the office like by
Hmm.
lunchtime to like charge it up again because I
Oh
didn't have a
man.
battery pack on me. So it was tough, but I knew that was something that they were going to fix, but that's not the big picture
Hmm.
problem with this device. So I still, I know they just put out an update, but I still feel confident in my overall assessment of this is that it's more about fundamentally what it can and can't do is like the big issue here.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are moments when I enjoyed it, but like I loved just using the camera to like point this at something and ask a question. You can do that on your phone, but
Yeah.
I would argue that most people probably aren't.
It's more like a visibility, awareness of certain types of features, right? Because yeah, you can do computer vision stuff. You can point ChatGPT or Copilot or even like the Google Lens stuff, where add objects, have it describe things, and this does that. It has a cool camera that can rotate backwards or towards you, and okay, fine. I guess I'm just like so flabbergasted how undercooked this entire project is. It reminds me of when like maybe 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, when like there were more hardware startups and people were just trying to do crazy things. And it kind of felt like companies were just like gathering VC money because like, hey, we got this crazy buzzword pitch of a product. Give us millions of dollars. And I believe Rabbit has gotten quite a bit of VC funding in addition to like the pre-order money and stuff that they've gotten for this stuff. So they have the buzzword of AI that they're kind of riding, and the idea that they showed off is that the large large action model is something you could eventually train. You could show it how to use an app, and maybe you could eventually command the Rabbit R1 to do that. But I have no faith that this product will ever be updated to actually do that, or even if they do, it won't work well
Right.
because nothing works
There's
well
that
right now.
teaching mode that's supposed to
Yeah.
like teach it how to use other apps so that like it
Yep.
can do, more than just DoorDash. But like pretty much everything on that device, it's not really available yet, and there's no like real timeline of like when it
Mhm.
will be instituted. So
They have like a vague timeline on the website of features like coming down the line, and
right.
training is like one. I asked Rabbit like, "Hey, so when can we expect this?" And they're like, "Hey, we have this is like this is all we're saying right now, right?" They're not giving actual time frame. So it could be the end of the year, it could be later.
Mhm.
I don't know if this company will even be around in a year or two because of how like disastrous this entire thing is. A couple of things I want to point out. There were stories going around that the R1 itself is basically is like a underpowered phone that's running an Android app. Rabbit has denied claims that its like interface is an Android app, but there's an APK going around there. It looks like the same thing. It could be it's just using like a similar Linux base that allows it to also run on some Android phones. But again, even that like proves the point. Like, yes, it's running on a stripped down version of hardware that people are already carrying. Why should people buy anything else? I'll also point out we've seen stories where we know Apple is working on further AI integration into iOS, the upcoming version. We've seen the stories that they were talking with Google and talking with OpenAI about that sort of integration. I'm sure more AI is coming to Android because like Google is all in at this point. So yeah, I think we're just going to see these things highlighted more in our operating systems. That's essentially what Copilot is in Windows 2, right? Just like, hey, AI is front and center. It's not like hidden behind a whole bunch of stuff. Um, yeah. Do you guys have any further thoughts about like could AI actually be useful for us in mobile, in desktop down the line? Or I'm a little like I don't know how many of these things will actually be useful, but things like transcription are actually helping my life now. So that's something.
Yeah, I think it'll be hard to get like out of the habits that we're already so
Yeah.
used to. So I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's also a company called Brain AI.
Hmm.
They were at Mobile World Congress, and I think they have the most compelling implementation yet of like AI on a device because they are putting it on a phone.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
instead of just not having apps be part of the equation entirely, they kind of generate this interface on top of your phone that sounds kind of similar to what Rabbit is trying to do. So if you want to buy something on Amazon, you could say, find me a tennis racket. It'll pull up a tennis racket and you can press and hold it and say, show me a video review of it. And like this idea of just being able to issue these commands to jump between different apps instead of closing the app, maybe copy and pasting that URL into YouTube and searching for the video, that kind of a thing,
Hmm.
I think is really promising. But again, that's something that lives on a phone and it's not replacing apps. It's just kind of making it easier to jump between the two. I think that is going to be the most useful and compelling thing. And I think the big smartphone makers already kind of know that, especially Google for one. I think
Hmm.
circle to search is kind of a step towards that direction.
Mhm.
But yeah, I also think that it's going to take a really long time to get there. I don't think this is something that's going to happen in like, I don't know, Android 16 or something. I don't think we're going to see this big reimagining of
Yeah.
what like the smartphone operating system is, but I think it'll change slowly over time.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so one thing that like, I just thought of just now is like I can't believe I'm going to mention Bixby, but like
Oh my God.
we even saw
Yeah.
this years ago when
Mhm.
Samsung introduced Bixby, and they're like, "Hey, you can give it complex commands, or you can say, hey Bixby, post the photo that I just took to Instagram." And so it would take something from your photo roll and post it to Instagram, which is like kind of like a semi-complex instruction set, and it would do that. It wasn't 100%, but it was like maybe 75% of the time, and so that's kind of interesting. And but like like both of you were saying, it's super annoying because almost everybody's phone has better hardware than the Rabbit, and so the
Hmm.
idea of like even if it is an app, and I can see some like logic against that. Like the large action model is like a proprietary thing that they're developing, and then it just happens to be like that's how you access it through the Rabbit, built on Android. And okay, fine, but like you got to do more. But I did have one question for both of
Mhm.
you, and so like looking at these devices, the AI pen suffered from a lot of similar challenges. But when I'm like reviewing stuff, I always like try to look for like, hey, is there like one redeemable quality of like the device? Like, hey, I want to see more of that. And so like for me with the AI pen, I kind of liked the idea of like the laser projector as
Sure.
like, hey, you don't want to wear smart glasses, but you can have a pen and it'll project a display on your hand. So you have like, a sort of like heads up display ish thing, but without having to look like, a Google Glass nerd or whatever.
Mhm.
Is there something on the like Rabbit R1 that you think is like redeemable? Is it the design? Is it like, whatever?
I mean, personally, like it looks kind of cool, but like Teenage Engineering can sell me, a garden hose or something. Like they put
Sure.
their design talents on something, like I'll be like, oh, that's really compelling and minimalist and kind of cool looking. I think the main design thing they're selling here is like the rotating the scroll wheel. And I hate the scroll wheel. I hate it so much because it's the only way you can interact with the interface, even though
Mhm.
the screen is a touch screen, and then it turns into a touch screen if you have to type in text. And I can't honestly think of like a single redeeming thing other than it looks kind of cool. But that's not on Rabbit. That's on Teenage Engineering.
And you have to be really in love with that shade of orange because there's no other color options.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you won't
very
lose it.
orange.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, so I actually do have like something nice to say about
Hmm.
it. It doesn't make up for all of the shortcomings, of course, but I do think it was pretty good at understanding my intention when I would ask it something. Like,
Hmm.
even if it couldn't answer the question, it would acknowledge what I asked and why, and it would tell me why it couldn't answer that question sometimes versus like, with Siri or something, you might get, I can't help with that, or I don't know how to help with that right now. Like, I don't feel like I really got that unless I was like maybe trying to use Uber and I couldn't really figure out why that wasn't working. But if I were to ask it a question like, I pointed the camera at something I was eating for lunch and tried to ask it how many calories
Hmm.
was in a meal like this, and it, you know, identified what was in the dish, but it's also said that it couldn't tell me the calorie information because it doesn't know much about the portion size or other
Mm.
ingredients in it. So I thought that was really interesting that it could understand me pretty well, but again, that's still not enough to make up for all the other shortcomings.
Yeah,
But that
it's like
said, yeah.
I was gonna say, it's like a nice change because it's like like you were saying, it's like a lot of times when you're like talking to AI, it doesn't feel like you're on the
Hmm.
same page. So just
Hmm.
Yeah.
just to feel like it's like, oh, it kind of like understands me a little bit is, it's a kind of nice development, I guess.
The other thing about the Rabbit R1 that I thought was really kind of hindered the experience was the fact that once it answers something for you, there's no way
Hmm.
to find that answer again. Like when I
Yeah.
thought, sightseeing was a great example because you're asking it for things nearby, you're asking it to identify things. And when I would ask it for ideas of things to do in the neighborhood or whatever, it gives me this really long-winded answer that sometimes was actually quite good. Like, the recommendations weren't bad,
Hmm.
but then I couldn't find those answers again. And one time I think I was asking it to build me like a vacation itinerary or something, and it gave me some points of interest. And I was like, can you send that to my email or can you save that to my journal? And it told me no. And
No,
it
that
told
would
me
be
to write it
useful.
down. It literally said you could just jot it down, which
You
I
could
thought was
just
kind
write
of
it down.
funny. But
Do you have a pen and
It's like,
paper?
isn't that your job? Like,
That's
what the
your
hell?
job,
right.
AI. It is a very good device at telling you what it can't do. Like, yeah, I got the alert
Yeah.
too with Uber and DoorDash. Like, this may be kind of slow on Rabbit OS. Like, it
Mhm.
literally says that may or may not work depending on where you are. Good to know that Uber didn't work for you too, Lisa, because I asked
Yeah.
Rabbit about this and they're like, it depends on what the
Same.
partners allow. It depends on what Uber allows them to get access to. So if any of these companies are like, I don't want this stupid AI company to be like doing weird stuff with their AI stuff, they can just block access to it entirely. And I haven't seen anybody use the Uber thing at this point. So maybe it's just
There's
entirely
also
dead.
some like tinkering that needs to happen sometimes because I couldn't get DoorDash to work at first either, and
Uh-huh.
I was wondering why. And I realized I don't know if this is why, but this did work for me.
Hmm.
I noticed that Apple Pay was my default payment method on DoorDash, and it would make
Mm.
sense that it wouldn't work through the R1 because you can't you need to authenticate it through your
Right.
phone. So that's probably why it didn't work. But
of course, it wouldn't
once,
tell
yeah,
you. It wouldn't
no,
be
it
like,
wouldn't tell me
"Hey,
that.
I'm having a payment issue. Can you please confirm you have a credit card?" or something like that. No more devices like this. I don't like. Please, if you're gonna throw us things to review, please have them be done. That's
I was
all
like,
I
Devindra,
ask.
I think I got bad news for you because
Uh
this
huh.
is not the last time we're gonna
Oh,
see anything like this.
I'm sure, but I hope the like viscerally negative reaction to the Humane AI pin, and I'm assuming this one, is going to be a sign, maybe a warning to some companies that are going to try to attempt this. So we'll see.
Or maybe not. Maybe
Yeah.
they don't care and they like because both of these devices, even though it's bad attention, they still got a lot of attention.
They
So
get a
I
lot of
could see,
Hmm.
attention.
yeah.
Yeah. It's more like when will the VC money dry up? Because that is what is enabling these startups to do their things. I can imagine Samsung and other companies will just like keep pouring money at like these weird experiments. But a small company like Rabbit, which we had never heard about, but we're doing weird teases before CES. I don't know if this will be a thing again. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but I think VC is spending a lot of money on AI hype. That has to stop at some point, you know. So anyway, Lisa, where can people find you online these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on X. I almost said Twitter, at
You could say
Lisa
Twitter. We all
Eadicicco.
say Twitter. It's fine.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Lisa Eadicicco. I'm also on Threads at Lisa Eadicicco, and of course, you can find my work on CNET.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And check out Lisa's review. My review will be going up soon too.
Of course, thank you guys so much for having me.
You can pause
Oh,
here. Yep.
yeah. Okay, Lisa, can you? Oh,
Oh, well,
did Lisa? Wow, Lisa just jumped off.
it's
Okay.
okay. It's okay.
Maybe
It's
she hit
okay.
the wrong button.
Yeah, you hit the wrong button. It's all good. Hello, live stream. I just want to keep going, and we'll do a Q&A after. And I will. Let me just ping Lisa right now to send me the audio while we can.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So, but quickly, I
Yeah.
wanted to mention a couple of things that people said. Declan said, isn't this just a bad smartphone app that someone
Yes.
decided they should wrap in plastic? Yes. And then I was like, haha, we'll get to that. Because that was pretty early in the segment.
Mhm.
Then Declan also had another good point saying that they should have sold this idea to Amazon Prime so they could have done a Fallout Pip-Boy instead. Because you know what? They probably would have sold more Pip-Boys
Mhm.
than they would have sold this classic, not
There's
classic,
still
but
time.
this rabbit gadget.
Yeah. There's absolutely still time.
I was looking in the chat. Apparently, when I said, "Hey, Samsung's assistant," I triggered something on their phone.
Really?
So,
I thought they
number
killed
one,
Bixby.
someone has Bixby activated.
Okay.
Uh,
Kill
awesome.
Bixby.
Keeping the steam alive for Samsung's AI.
I see some questions. Does the from Sherlyn, does this thing run hot? It barely runs, so doesn't doesn't really matter. It
I
doesn't
mean,
get
yeah.
hot, I guess, unless the
At
unlike
least
the
you're not
Humane
getting
AI pin.
burned like the Humane pin.
It's amazing. I mean, it is burning battery for absolutely no reason. Like I would sit there and watch the battery just tick down. I'm not even
Wow,
asking it
really?
questions or anything. Yeah, it's just
I
so
will
dumb.
say I kind
Mhm.
of like the the little bouncing rabbit icon. It's kind of like soothing in like a
Sure,
screensavery sort of way.
it is. It does a lot of things like that sort of cuteness, like the kawaii-ness of it is we've seen on other devices before. We've seen on so many things. A line I have in my review is like, I am no longer impressed that I can order food on the internet. This is not 1999, and that's kind of what this thing is selling me. Is like, you can order DoorDash from this box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
I can do that already. Thank you.
I'm also just as far as like blanket AI statements go, I'm
Mhm.
also generally not impressed when an AI does a summary for me because there are so
Yeah,
many AI services that can do a summary of a meeting or a summary of a news story or pick out,
they all
plan a
exist.
fake restaurant like
Yeah.
list, and it's like I don't need this.
One thing I will probably put into our review video is like you can point this at a document and it will like read the text and summarize it. It can even like work on spreadsheets, but I pointed it at my review copy and then it's just the rabbit R1 saying how much it sucks, saying aloud like how much it sucks. It's kind of funny. I'll be honest.
I've heard a few people pointing it at like their partners or wife,
Yeah.
husband, whatever, and it just does like the most heinous description of them. Just calling people like, "Oh, that grandmother over there, looks real bored," and it's like a woman in her 30s or
Mhm.
something, and it's just like,
The camera
okay,
is so terrible. Let's move on. Let's move on. I gotta get out of here. I also have some briefings to get to, so we'll do all this. And Sam, you may have some feelings about this. The first topic. We'll try to do some Q&A after this, folks. Okay, so sit tight. Let's move on to some other news. I think some of the biggest news this week that I've been seeing is that Elon Musk is on a tear. He's apparently on a tear at Tesla, where it seems like he has fired everybody working on the supercharger project. So that is the EV charging. The whole setup for that thing impacts the executive leaders, 500 staffers. I find this kind of baffling because isn't Tesla getting a lot of money to spread the supercharger network? Isn't like that a linchpin of other companies working together with the supercharger network? Sam, like you have been looking at the car stuff. Do you have any sense of like what's happening here?
It is pretty baffling. And like it's just super annoying because you know everyone most of the car makers have switched over to NACS, which was a Tesla developed connector, although now it's available for everybody. And it's like really just like what's the biggest issue that everyone talks about EVs? It's like don't have enough chargers, or the chargers are slow, or a lot of times they're broken and
Unreliable.
don't work,
Yeah.
or unreliable. And so it's just like super annoying. Be like, you finally, convince everyone to adopt the same connector. There is a big network, but it's going to need to be a lot bigger for more people to, really want to adopt EVs. And it's just like the timing is just like really just not great.
Do you think it's like, I mean, we know Musk is a capricious guy who like will just like make decisions like on a whim. Is this like a weird response, like an anti-Biden response? Like he has also been like working with a cabal of people against the current government. Apparently, like there's like a whole. He's becoming more and more right wing.
Yeah,
So I wonder if that's part of it.
it could be. My theory is that Tesla stock is not doing well. They had a real, disappointing sales
Yeah.
in Q1. And I think, they've recently done a bunch of layoffs. And I think this is Elon's just like, revenue doesn't look good. We're going to axe a ton of people. And in this case, unfortunately, axing an entire department gets some payroll off the books. But it just feels really ham-fisted. Now, we should probably mention that, like, someone on Twitter asked Elon about this,
Yeah.
and he said he's saying that the supercharger network will still grow, but quote, just at a slower pace for new locations and more focus on 100% uptime and expansion of existing locations. So there is a little bit of like, okay, I get it. Like one of the big issues is that with a lot of like Ford and other companies using the Tesla supercharging network, the cables on superchargers are not long enough to accommodate like all the different charging port locations on these various models. So there is a lot of work to be done about that in terms of like, hey, getting a cord that's long enough, that's not broken, so that it can accommodate more than just Tesla specific vehicles.
But how is
So
he
there
going
is
to
a
do?
little bit
How
of
are they
that.
going to do that without the vast majority of the supercharger team? That's where I'm.
I mean, yeah, that's the big question. I mean, who knows? It's like, is it simple as like, hey, we assign some contractor to go and swap out a cable. Who knows? But yeah, so there is a little bit of positivity, but it's still overall kind of a baffling decision.
We did also recently talk about a judge recently rejected Musk's proposal for a pay package, right? The $55.8 billion pay package from Tesla. The judge called that an unfathomable sum of money. I almost wonder if he's like, okay, well, we're gonna cut costs and I'm gonna get money out of this company somehow at some point. So maybe just by
Right,
saving jobs.
trying to pinch a few pennies to make sure that his like options payout is bigger. Just not the greatest optics, especially in the wake of layoffs.
Did they open source something, Sam? Was it the connector or the supercharger
Yeah, the
setup?
the
Yeah.
NACS was a Tesla patent, but now it is available for open
But that's just the plug. That is just like the interface, right? Not the
the connector.
whole,
Yeah.
not the whole other thing. I do want to point out several people have reported that Tesla took in $17 million in EV charging grants to essentially support the supercharger network. So this is kind of stinks. Another Elon Musk special, I guess. In other news, we saw that the FCC is fining America's largest wireless carriers $200 million for selling customer location data. Um, Basically, this is like location information being sold to aggregators. This affects AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile together. Remember Sprint? Okay, I remember when this story initially broke, and this seems like okay, this is genuine. This is like a genuine payment. It's not just like a slap on the wrist fine. 200 $200 million in total across all these carriers. That's something, and maybe we'll hopefully prevent them from doing something like this again, right, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, but the whole problem of like data breaches and stuff like that, it just
Yep.
becomes such a pervasive thing. It feels like there's a new breach happening every day, and it's like at some point you have to hold these companies accountable for leveraging holding people's information and then not protecting it in a way
Yeah.
that. And so like I think some of
And
the companies.
actively selling it, like, actively profiting from it when people
Absolutely.
don't realize.
and and
Yeah.
and so like I, I know in terms of like the data breaches, like T-Mobile has like given people like subscriptions to some like the watchdog services, which is nice, but like, and this is it's just becoming a wide growing problem. I
Mhm.
think GM ran into this where they were selling data on the driving history of
Yep. Yep.
of owners, and it's just like at some point we're going to need some sort of regulation to step in and be like, hey, this is not okay.
Mhm.
uh, because until they do that, companies are going to say, hey, I can make a quick buck, and even if things go wrong, it's they're not responsible for any of the damages.
And companies are doing this across the board, like, we've seen the reports about, advertisements in TVs, like, those are companies are making money because you're seeing advertisements in a product you've already bought, a product that you probably did not even expect ads in, but that is extra money, extra revenue for all these companies. I think the FCC is finally paying more attention. I think that's the main thing.
Hmm.
The real time location data selling that became, they knew about that in 2018. So like this is all kind of a response to that thing. T-Mobile is facing the biggest fine, $80 million, because Sprint was also fined $12 million. They say that's excessive. AT&T said the decision lacked both legal and factual merit, and the decision, quote, perversely punishes the companies for supporting life-saving location services. I think you can support life-saving location services without selling people's data. I think
Right.
that's
That's kind
a
of
pretty
like
basic
throwing the
thing.
baby out with the bathwater situation. Where it's like there are good, legitimate uses of this,
Mhm.
but you don't have to profit on every single item of point of data.
Anyway, another fun thing, Razer announced it's gonna be refunding Zephyr mask, the costs to buyers, because, remember they claimed this thing, this was the light up mask, they claimed it was an N95 mask. This is part of a more than $1.1 million settlement with the FTC, because the FTC, like, looked at everything Razer was saying, and they said, "No, that's not actually true." Did you I remember we covered some of the Sam, and we were like, "This is a cool looking mask. I would buy
Yeah,
this
I
actively
have
powered
one.
mask." Yeah?
I stupidly put it on like I think last year when
Yeah.
the wildfires like made the whole sky turn orange in like Northeast. And so even when it was out, there was like some very fine like semantic arguing about like its N95 like
Yeah.
capabilities.
Mhm.
And it seems that Razer probably aired even probably too strongly on even mentioning N95 capabilities at all. And so
Mhm.
that's what they're really getting in trouble for. And you know, it kind of makes sense because Razer not exactly known for making like medical like PPE type devices,
Mhm.
and so like you got to be careful about that stuff. And uh, I mean, hopefully they learn their lesson.
I mean, hopefully all these companies are Razer is one of those companies that is, like, loudly good at spouting, like, marketing claims, right? And, like, that moment of the pandemic too was on when I think a lot of people were thinking, like, "I could make money selling masks, right? We could
And it was
sell
kind of
masks."
crazy how fast they
Yeah.
turned this thing around because
Mhm.
like this thing had RGB built in, it had some fans built in, and they
It
were
looks
talking about
cool.
like
Yeah.
they were going to make a future version with like a voice amplification and like some other features, and it's just
Yes.
like okay,
So
it'd
we could
be
all sound
interesting
like
to see,
RoboCop.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
see like a tech company take on the idea of like, what if we have to live in a world where you have to wear masks all the time? But at the same time, it's like you have to do the basics right. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm reading from our report here. According to the FTC, Razer never submitted the Zephyr mask for testing to the FDA, which certifies things for things like N95. The company is handing over pretty much all the money it earned, all the money it earned from selling these masks to the FTC, and the FTC is going to dole it back out to customers. So, okay, this is an ongoing story, I guess, but what an end to the Razer thing, because we did talk about this as just being like it's just a whole wide thing. We also saw the news. I don't know if you have feelings about this, Sam, but Drake deleted his AI generated Tupac track after Tupac Shakur's estate was like, "Don't do that. You didn't get permission to use the voice." And this is amid the whole like the diss track like back and forth, right, between him and Kendrick and everybody
Mhm.
else. I don't know if you have thoughts about this, Matt, Sam, but it is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's very funny, but at the same time, it's like you know better because it's like you're taking one of the greats of like rap history and
Hmm.
using it for like a kind of silly purpose without permission, which you knew about, and it's like
Hmm.
okay, probably do that. And then also this is tied into like the whole Taylor Swift drama situation too somehow, and it's just I don't know.
It's I think we're gonna see more and more of this. So yeah, not too surprised. But every time I see a new update from the whole like diss track back and forth, I don't know what to think about the that aspect of pop culture. Like so much Taylor Swift stuff is just like far beyond everything I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
hard to keep up. Yeah.
it is hard to keep up. Let's move on to what we're working on. Sam, yeah, what do you want to shout out?
Yeah, I got the Alienware M16R2
Oh, nice. Yeah.
in for review. We saw that back at CES, but now it's
Hmm.
finally available. So I want to do a full review on that. I just heard that the MSI Claw is coming in, so hopefully we'll check that out in the future at some
Okay.
point. That could be a little spicy, but we'll see.
The claw.
And
Hmm.
we in Gadget we got some like a big kitchen package coming out sometime in May, and so I'm testing out the Breville in Fizz, which is sort of like their version of a soda stream, but there are
Ooh.
actually some really cool
Okay.
advantages to this thing. No, most notably, it will carbonate pretty much anything. It doesn't
Mm.
like it doesn't have to be just water. You could carbonate orange juice, lemonade, whatever.
I'm
So
a
that's kind
Breville
of cool.
fanboy, so I am intrigued by that. There was another company that has also made something that you can fizz
Yeah,
anything.
it's the Drink Master.
The
Yep.
Drink Master, yeah. So
But
yeah.
in my opinion, the Infiz just looks a lot better. The name
Mm.
is not the best, but yeah, it looks better. Very super easy to use. And then I'm also testing out the Ninja Creamy because
Sure.
summer's coming up soon. Everyone, what's better than ice cream on a hot day?
I'll tell you what's
Um,
better though is shaved ice. Is shave ice. I have a shave ice maker. It's like $100, but it's great because the
Actually,
kids
thank
always
you for
love it.
reminding me because
Yes.
I need to test out if this thing can do shaved ice.
Yes, definitely worth a thing, but, it's also, like, when you have kids, giving them just essentially crushed ice is so much better than ice cream, which, is packed with sugar. With the crushed ice, it's like you can put a little bit of syrup, you don't have to, like, go
Right,
heavy
right,
on it.
right.
I'm also a shave ice fiend, so this is my summer already, like, I'm just, like, devouring this stuff. But yeah, love Breville products, Sam. I love the way they look. I have several in my kitchen right now, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that stuff. I am still in the midst of testing the new Surface devices. The Rabbit review kind of took priority. I'm probably going to do some quick reviews on these things because they don't actually look different. The Surface Pro 10 and the Laptop 6 for business, both of them for business. And we're also prepping for the Microsoft Build event where we're expecting to see like consumer versions of these surfaces and maybe something very new. I don't know what that'll be. Yeah. So that's what I'm dealing with right now. Around Engadget, Billy Steele has reviewed the Beats Solo 4. I gave it a score of 78. And he says it has upgraded audio, extended battery life, a familiar design. These look like the Beats Solo, like how they've always looked. I don't know if you've experienced these, Sam, but like I reviewed the Beats Solo 2 in like 2014, and these don't look very different.
I
It's kind of
I
hilarious.
I now that, like, the AirPod Maxes and, like, the whole AirPods, like, family has,
Hmm.
like, expanded a little bit, I am legitimately not sure why that Beats branding still exists.
It's very weird. I mean, I could see it for certain types of things, or but apply Beats to Apple stuff too. Because it's from what we've read, there are two separate hardware divisions. Beats
Mhm.
has its own speaker and like headphone makers, and Apple has its own people, and they just never are like really combining their
Yeah,
efforts,
and
I
I'm
guess.
like, I have to
Yeah.
wonder, is like, are there enough people who are like Beats like brand loyalty where like continuing to like, have two separate teams makes sense? I mean, I guess that's probably a question for Apple, but I feel like
Mhm.
there isn't.
It is I mean that's a rare case, right? Where Apple bought a company like full on, like paid what was it? I forget how many billions, but it was a
Yeah,
big
Dr.
chunk.
Dre got like a big payout in that.
Dr. Dre got a big payoff. We're watching the collapse of Peloton, by the way. We at some point predicted like Peloton would be a good fit for Apple. Peloton is collapsing right now as we speak, and I could still see like Apple being like, we could do something with that hardware and with like the basic infrastructure that they set up. But I don't know if Beats is actually working out for them. So maybe that's a point against it. Guess we'll see. Let's move on to our pop culture picks for the week. Sam, what do you got?
I just finished up. I know this came out a little while back, but
Mhm.
I finned up Lupin season 3, which is truly
Love
excellent.
Lupin. Yeah.
If you need a good like spy con man caper drama, it's excellent. And then recently, I just picked up Kaiju number 8, which is an anime. The whole premise is that this guy, we live in a Japan where kaiju come and kind of stomp on the cities all the time, and the main character is works for the crew that cleans up after the
Yes.
kaiju remains.
Yeah.
And then at some point he gets some powers, but I don't want to ruin anything. But it's really good. Enjoying it so far. It's kind of like an offbeat take on the superhero kaiju genre, which
Mhm.
is fresh enough where it feels nice and original, and they're definitely interesting.
Awesome. I will check that out. I want to shout out a movie that's hitting limited release this week and will be available later this month. And it's called I Saw the TV Glow, directed by Jane Schoenbrunn. And they had made a movie called We All Went to the World's Fair, I believe. Sherlyn reviewed that at Sundance or like talked about it a while back. This is a fascinating movie. It is sort of a movie for anybody who grew up in the 90s and was like obsessed with Buffy and shows like that. And I totally relate to that experience, but it's also using that as a lens for basically the trans experience in the 90s and right after, of being so obsessed with another world where your body doesn't feel like your own, where you feel like you don't even belong in this space. It is kind of juggling all those things. It is a beautiful movie. It's beautiful, it's dark and twisted and maybe a little slow at times, but I just found it to be really compelling and really fascinating, and certainly is one of those folks. I don't know about you, Sam, but I was like such a Buffy head because I did not like where I was living, when I was a teenager. So like to escape and to be somewhere else and to come up with like super fans, to meet up with people who were also similarly obsessed. And the 90s were a special time because it's not like you had a ton of content coming, right? If you
Yeah,
see something, somebody basically had to turn you onto it, and then you had to share tapes because reruns weren't really a thing. You couldn't just like buy a DVD box set. You couldn't stream anything.
it was like the last analog era, and
Yeah.
so it's like this wasn't on my radar, but
Mhm.
like I think I was a '90s kid, so like to
Yep.
see this is like I'm interested. I'm like I feel like we're at the age where like we're getting nostalgic for those '90s,
Mhm.
and like other directors and creative types are like, hey, they're kind of channeling some of that.
Yep.
So it's like kind of coming around again, which I'm
I
I'm all
believe,
for.
yeah, Jane Schoenbrum is also a 90s kid. Like they lived through this as well, and it is fascinating to see this channeled. I have never seen like the way we used to get obsessed about TV shows just really distilled in a way that also feels very true and feels very real. It's just like a touchstone of my life. Like I was so into these shows like in high school and in college. That those were my friend circles, right? Those were the people I hung out with, and it's such a big thing. It's sort of weird. Like, yeah, you can get obsessed with shows right now, but there's so much going on, right? Like when Buffy was a thing, when all these shows were things, like, no, you get really into these shows because it's not like you have too much other genre stuff to
Right.
dive
The,
into.
the,
Yeah.
the, the amount of choice was so limited that like you find one thing is like that is your thing because there's nothing
Mhm.
else.
So I freaking love this movie. When you get a chance to see it, I think totally worth it. Starring Justice Smith, by the way, who's in the Detective Pikachu movie. Like he's been in all sorts of stuff, but I think this is a towering performance from him. He was in Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, right? He's been in Dungeons and Dragons. I've also loved him in like all the stuff. they've been in.
I thought he was
So
great in Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons, so good, underrated, like one of the best movies of last year. But yeah, that's it. Check out I Saw the TV Glow, and yeah, check out Jane Schoenbrum's other film, which I believe you can get on demand right now. All right, that's it for the episode, folks. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our former managing editor, Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by Ben Ellman. You can find Sam online at
Sam Rutherford.
Awesome. And you can find me online at Devindra on Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, all over the place. I'm on Threads, but don't hit me up at Threads, please. And yeah, hopefully Sherlyn will be back next week too. She just needed a break this week. We're all so busy. Email us at podcast@engadget.com. Leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts, including Spotify.
So Sherlyn's definition of a break is hanging out in the YouTube
In
chat.
chat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Sherlyn, you can't be
You
like, I don't
can't,
want to come
right.
on the podcast and then just be in chat the whole time.
Well, then she doesn't have to perform and present, so
I
she can
guess.
enjoy the
Yeah.
podcast
No,
vicariously.
she has like a long time to get ready for a broadcast like this. So
How is the chat doing?
one of the big things that I wanted to shout out from the chat was something that actually came up before we did that little chat break. Simon B asked me, can we touch on this, or we can touch on this question later in the stream, but I feel like AI is just a rebranding compared to what we had for most of the tech we buy that doesn't have self-learning. Okay, that's a little bit confusing. I think I jumbled the reading of that, but the way that I took it was that aren't we already using machine learning stuff, and how
Yes.
much of the AI wave is like a big rebrand of that?
So machine learning is part of the whole AI thing. We've slowly been making this transition. I think the main AI stuff has been the generative AI things that we've seen, like ChatGPT, and those are the things wowing everybody, where it's like you could ask it a question, it will get you a natural worded response. You can give it a long document and we'll do a decent job of summarizing things. That's where you go a step beyond just machine learning. Like there's been a lot of reporting around the transformer model that was initially developed at Google, and that is the thing of like taking data and thinking about it in a way and manipulating in a way that's different than other platforms, other like data structures have before. So because of the transformer model and the way it's approaching data, it can take a look at large data sets and break it down really quickly. That is what we're calling AI right now. It's still not true AI, it's just a little closer.
Yeah, because I think what people are talking about is like artificial general intelligence, and that's like something to shoot toward, but who knows if we're going to get there.
I've been reading about the dream of artificial general intelligence like since I was a child. Like I've been reading Ray Kurzweil and people like that forever.
Yep,
Like
yep,
he's
yep.
been talking about the singularity forever, and that's
Yep.
essentially what the singularity is. I don't know. Like it seemed like that stuff was a crock of shit for a long time, and as we're watching generative AI get better and better, I'm like, okay, maybe something interesting could happen. But I don't love that these people are treating it like we're waiting for God. We're just trying to create God, and then everything will be different. Our lives as humans, the second coming of computer Jesus, basically, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's gonna like it would qualify as like general artificial intelligence, but Elon has been out there saying that AI will be smarter than humans by the end of next year. So
maybe smarter than him.
end of 2025. Put a date on that. We can revisit this, I guess.
Okay, so the two of you remember a webcomic called Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal?
Yes, SBC. Yeah.
There was a SBC strip from years and years ago. This was probably like 2010 or something, where it said that the amount of time until the singularity is directly proportional to the lifespan of the futurist talking about it. So, a young futurist, age 25 or 30 or something, will be like, man, things are really going to change in the next 30 years. A futurist age 70 is like, things are going to change by 12 noon tomorrow, so I can live forever.
I mean, that's there was a documentary about Ray Kurzweil too. Like he's working on this stuff because he wants to like resurrect his dead father and essentially live forever himself too. Like it's a whole, there's a lot going on. psychologically, personally, emotionally, like in this stuff. At the same, like, I think the response right now is like anybody talking about AGI is kind of a quack and kind of a kook, but I see enough really smart people being like, well, maybe there's something there.
Right.
I do like take like a hesitant sort of like, okay, maybe we should at least be thinking about it. Maybe not be prepared to worship it, but hey, what's happening here? I actually just started reading or listening to the audiobook by Mustafa Suleyman, who is now the CEO of Microsoft AI, co-founder of DeepMind. But he did this book called The Coming Wave, which is like a weird. It's called the Coming Wave: Technology Power in the 21st Century's Greatest Dilemma. And I'm like an hour into this thing, and it's a lot of like him just like being genuinely fearful and warning about like, guys, we don't know what's happening here, and we got to be really careful about how we're doing it. Even though it's very much the, I think you should leave meme of like, we need to find the people who are doing this while he's doing
Yeah.
this. But reading his stuff, he doesn't sound like an AI doomer or kook. It's more like, I see what's happening. I see we're going to develop this stuff, and he wants to do it responsibly. I think the book is very interesting too. So if you guys want to check that out, that's called The Coming Wave. Yeah.
I mean, it all comes back to the fact that computer scientists love to call themselves engineers, but they don't necessarily take all the engineering ethics that, like, the civil
Mhm.
engineers that build bridges
Sure.
do.
I mean,
So,
listen, civil engineer is not always known for ethics either. Like, yeah.
well, yes, but
Yeah.
at least like civil engineers have like these really dramatic examples of like, here's a bridge that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
completely destroyed by destructive resonance versus like, are there many universities that have a like computer engineering or computer science ethics course talking
Yeah.
about how Facebook really powered a like genocide in what was it, Indonesia? Don't quote me on that.
Yes. It certainly did power genocide, maybe a couple actually. I mean, that's the sort of stuff like, yeah, I'm sure colleges are talking about that now, right? Like, but as it was happening, we didn't have the model or the text to even like discuss it. Um, I think that's what's interesting about this book is that Suleiman is basically saying like, hey, like I'm warning about what I could see happening, and that includes like rampant job loss. It includes like he's also talking about like
Which
bioengineered
which which
life.
we are already
Yeah,
seeing in terms of
yeah,
job loss, like, you know.
yeah. Not necessarily because of AI, but because maybe managers think AI can do more than it really
Right,
can.
like
Yeah,
a lot of like, people trying to place like call center
yeah,
employees with AI, which is like we're not there yet, people.
Well, yeah, and what was it? Like the National Center for like Eating Disorder
hmm,
Awareness or something like
Yeah.
shopped
yeah.
out their um crisis text line to a chatbot, and then the chatbot was like, here's ways to lose weight fast.
And
Cool.
it's like people who need help are the last people who should be getting like siphoned off to AI because they're very limited in what they can do, and you're just gonna make people even more depressed when you be like, oh my god, literally no one is listening to me, and they
Hmm.
turn they stick the robot on me because no one cares.
This we've talked about this when it's like the reservation thing, the Google reservation thing. I think it's very rude to sick an AI voice on a restaurant, or your friend who's like, "Oh, this person's on a call right now. Can I have a AI conversation with you while this person doesn't want to talk to you?" I find that all very rude, and we're all gonna have to like learn how to live with this stuff, basically.
Also,
Yeah.
it's just very silly that if you want to write a 5-word email or something, now so many email clients are saying, "Hey, you can make this so much better with AI." And then
Yeah.
eventually we're going to have an AI like brevity thing on the other side, the receiving side of the email. So that's going to take the zhuzhed up email that your AI helped write and strip it down for the person who's reading it. So we're just going to be using a whole lot more electricity to send the same meaning that could have been conveyed in 5 words.
Yes, and also like not only that, people are going to make longer emails using AI, and then the other people are going to use the AI to be like, "Can you break down this message to me?" And it's just going to like get back down to a garbled version of those 5 words that person initially was trying to send.
Yeah,
This
so
is
you're
where we're
doing like
going.
you're doing
It's double
English
AI.
yeah, you're doing English to English translation and things are going to be lost in that translation.
Ab- Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions?
I mean, right now the Engadget account and some user Sherlin Lowe are fighting, so I don't know what's going on there.
I saw in the chat earlier, Cud asked, make some carbonated coffee. So I
Yes.
tried that, and
Yes.
it's not a great idea because
Hmm.
the whole carbonation process adds a little bit of acidity to the drink,
Interesting.
and it makes carbonated coffee taste more sour than you think it would.
Was it
And
cold
so,
brew or is it hot coffee you were trying to do?
yeah, iced coffee.
Okay.
And so
Interesting.
it makes the coffee a little bit more acidic, which is why I think this is kind of like the general belief is like why if you go to like a nice coffee shop, they'll have like
Mhm.
nitro brew coffee
Yeah. Yeah.
because it doesn't impart the same level of like sourness and
It's just
acidity.
literally nitrous oxide. They're
Right, and so
mixing in. Yeah.
that was one thing I tested and was interesting. But I
Mhm.
think the idea of fizzy coffee is fun.
I mean,
I
fizzy
mean,
everything.
Manhattan Special exists.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am
Also,
tempted by the fizzyators. Yeah.
sparkling lemonade on a hot day, excellent. Can't go wrong.
Quote from
Although,
Cherlin for the episode, I guess. I'll take my diarrhea with bubbles, please.
oh goodness.
So okay, thanks, Cherlin. Thank you.
You are no longer allowed in my house, Sherlin.
Yeah,
Thank you.
seriously. Don't let her near your bathroom.
Sherlyn, we haven't had like a little Easter egg stinger at the end of the show for a few weeks because you haven't said something
Yeah.
really hilarious like that. So can you just record that and
Save
send it
it.
to me?
Save it.
I'm totally kidding.
Declan, you can the Infizz promise you can carbonate pretty much anything,
Anything.
including whiskey.
I've heard people recarbonating beer with the other stuff, like
Yeah,
flat beer you can save.
you can recarbonate things, and I recarbonated some like Coke, and it's like it's all right, but
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
you can tell that it's like it's not quite what it was, how it tasted originally, but you can do it. To me, the more interesting is like carbonating things that like, hey, you have some wine and you want to make sparkling wine instead of like buying champagne. That's a kind of interesting use case. So you definitely can carbonate alcohol.
Yep. I'm intrigued by that thing. I was looking at the wire cutter guide for like fizzy, soda makers essentially, and I had one of those things. What's the popular one? Like I
Soda
had one,
stream.
the Soda Stream in like 2009. It was fine,
Yeah.
but it was like it was not didn't taste good, and it was so annoying to use.
And I
So
think this
they
thing
seem better now.
looks a lot better, so you
Okay.
can like leave it on your countertop and you don't feel embarrassed. It's like it's not cheap, but it
Mhm.
also looks a lot nicer than
Breville,
less
man,
expensive
Breville.
stuff.
I have a
Yeah.
Breville espresso maker and a toaster oven. They're beautiful, and I use them every day. Okay.
Okay, I think we might be just about done. Thank you, everybody, for joining us a little bit early
Thank you.
this
Super helpful.
week.
Oh yeah, no worries.
And the stream comes to you by us. Devindra does the OBS, I do the camera switching, and we're happy to be back online, happy to be streaming these
As,
recording sessions to
I
you.
was gonna say, I think this is my first podcast since we
the
started
stream's back. Yeah.
restarted the video stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah, so just last shout outs. One to D Pro 9 and Simon B and Sherlyn Lowe,
You don't have to.
and the letter Y, and Jonathan Anderson. Jonathan, I hope you're still around because he said, "Oh wow, like I didn't know that the stream was back. That's great."
Awesome.
And we really like to see you come back because I notice your name. I recognize your name from past streams. We really love to see that everybody is coming back, even though we
Yes.
took a nearly year-long break from doing the episode live streams.
Took a long time to get back here. I will say, please thumbs up the stream. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do
thumbs
that.
up the
All this
stream.
stuff helps.
Sherlyn Lowe
Yeah.
says hello to Chooch. So yes, please thumbs up. Please come back next week, probably 10:30 a.m. U.S. Eastern time, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, folks. We're out.